I'll try this a new way. I'm gonna show you the tricks that I know. I'm getting tired of talking, and I need more of a show right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a fun night. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high. I won't be turning around, no, I won't be turning around. It's the right time. You feeling alright? I'm playing your game like I will win tonight. I think I'll do it on my way. I'm gonna show you what I'm going through, get you out of your comfort zone, 'cause I need more of the truth right now. It's time that you made your mind up, 'cause lately all it ever does is change. Feels like we're only talking, going round and around, back around. I will fight like no other every day. I won't stop like the others. I will stay. 'Cause now is the right time, and I'm feeling alright. I'm playing your game like I know I can win right now. It's a fun night. You got me up tonight, 'cause loving you is like I'm walking a tightrope so high. I won't be turning around, no, I won't be turning around. It's the right time. You feeling alright? I'm playing your game like I will win tonight. Don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it. We'll turn this around. Don't forget it, don't forget it, don't forget it. We'll turn this around.
Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some race reaction to the 2020 penalty Grand Prix. Russian Grand Prix. It really did feel like that, didn't it? Penalties left, right and centre, it felt like at one point. Not actually bad for Sochi though. Maybe in the minority. I actually thought if you consider what we usually get around Sochi, that was okay. Which at most tracks would be shockingly bad, but for Sochi, not bad at all. I'm happy with that one. Hope you guys enjoyed the race as well. Plenty to talk about today in this slightly tweaked race reaction. If you're expecting a run through the entire field, if we can, we will. If not, then we won't be. We're just going to talk about the race. We're going to react to it. Hey, race reaction, you see, very clever. Your very quick spoiler alert, but let's have a look at the race result. Valtteri Bottas finally winning a race again, his first win since Austria all the way back in July, 7.7 seconds clear of Max Verstappen with Lewis Hamilton in third place. Sean's cliche line now though, that does not tell half the story. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to that top three. Sergio Perez, brilliant drive. If a little unseen by the TV director, to fourth place, Daniel Ricciardo in fifth, topping off what's been a very good weekend for Renault. Sixth for Charles Leclerc. Man, is that guy driving the wheels off that Ferrari. Some more points on the board for him. Seventh for Esteban Ocon, who kind of had a race of two halves, really. Talk about that in a bit, of course. Daniel Kvyat in eighth. Pierre Gasly in ninth place, with Alexander Albon down in 10th. He did take a pre-race penalty to gain 5 places, but that still is only 10th place in a Red Bull. 11th for Antonio Giovinazzi. 12th for Kevin Magnussen. Only 13th for Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, 14th for Kimi Raikkonen, 15th for Lando Norris, it's 16th for Mr. Nicholas Latifi, 17th for Romain Grosjean, and George Russell down in 18th. Was running a little bit higher than that, and by a little bit higher I mean 17th, but then pitted and tried to go for fastest lap at the end, we think, which was a little bit ambitious for a Williams, but why not? What else have you got to fight for? And then 2 retirements. Carlos Sainz, who made an absolute fool of himself at turn 2, hitting the wall on the inside whilst trying to rejoin the track at speed between the 2 bollards, and Lance Stroll, who was hit by Charles Leclerc, it turns out, into turn 4, and that ended his race as well. But before I remove that from the screen, and I'm going to... It's been a while since I've spoken to him, actually, so I hope he's the same person. Good afternoon, Stuart.
Good afternoon, Sean. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. I'm quite happy with that. I said at the start, for Sochi, that was all right. I'm surprised.
Yeah, we come into this just sort of dreading it and just thinking we're going to have to get through this next hour and a half. But actually, it was, as you say, for Sochi, enjoyable in its own way.
Yeah, I think if we're having this discussion after somewhere like Monza, we're probably talking about how terrible a race it was. But actually, it's actually not bad for the Russian Grand Prix. I was happy about it. But we'll start with the very start of the race. We'll talk before the start of the race. Lewis Hamilton getting slapped with a couple of time penalties. I can't ever remember a driver receiving 2 penalties for effectively the same infringement, 2 separate penalties. He got for those who didn't see it, he decided to do a practice start outside of the designated area before the race start, and that resulted in a 5-second penalty for infringing it once, and then he went and did it again and got another 5-second penalty, which obviously 2 times 5 is 10, so that's 10 seconds for his pit stop. But I can't remember ever seeing that happen before, Stuart, at all.
No, I haven't either. And they normally just lump it into one. And actually, I got confused for another time because I couldn't quite work out what the 2 cases were. There was definitely one where he was sort of outside of the pit lane, almost on the track. And then I'm assuming they said he did one inside the pit lane, but in the wrong part. That's what I'm sort of gathering from that. But no, never seen that before. And then there was some confusion about whether or not he was allowed to take them all at once at the first pit stop, or if he had to take them separately in 2 5-second chunks. It seems like doing it all at once was fine. No one seems to be debating that now.
No, I did wonder if... I put a tweet out, and I did wonder if actually he might be in trouble for that because it's 2 separate penalties, but I think they've been lumped together as one, and that's absolutely fine. But it's a tricky one because Toto Wolff said after the race that he thinks that the wording of the rule was open to interpretation, which obviously Formula One teams absolutely love a loophole, as we know. So he's not quite so sure it should have been a penalty because he's saying the race director's notes were that you are allowed to make a practice start outside of the designated area if you leave space for other cars, but he was right at the end of a pit lane when drivers are coming out of speed, so it's quite difficult. First of all, he's gone against the race director's notes in some interpretations, but also he is in quite a dangerous position there, so I find it hard to argue that penalty. I think it probably is about right. And it's only 5 seconds twice as well. It could have been a drive-through or a stop-go or anything.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of things, he didn't lose a lot. It could have been awful, and he was in a Mercedes as well. So even though he got dumped about 10 places back in the field, he well, he didn't. He actually, I was going to say he was able to make it up quickly, but he sort of stood his ground, and everyone pitted around him, and he ended up just third, just driving a normal race. But yeah, you're right. It wasn't massive, and for all his moaning and complaining, it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Natalie Pinkham said to him after the race, it was a good recovery to third, and he said basically what you've just said there, that I didn't actually do anything. I just held my position, and then everyone pitted, and I ended up back up in third place. But I actually feel like that penalty, there was the moment that penalty was handed out, I thought, hang on a minute, this is it. Lewis Hamilton, he's not happy. He's going to have to come through the field. This is going to set this race alight. But actually, weirdly enough, I think by giving him that penalty, we were robbed of a better Grand Prix, because we had Hamilton on the soft tyres at the very start. Then we had Bottas and Verstappen on the mediums. I think without that penalty, we've actually got a far more intriguing race than we ended up with. So in some ways, I'm kind of annoyed that he got the penalty, but at the time it was like, hang on a minute, this is it. Lewis Hamilton on a fight back, and it just never really came to anything. He didn't have the pace to really close down. Verstappen wasn't on the pace of his teammate, really. I don't know how much of that was sort of looking after the car a little bit, the fact he'd been on the tyres longer, or that he was just a bit miffed. But ultimately, that kind of set the tone for the race, didn't it? And Valtteri Bottas, once that was done, it was pretty much his to lose, wasn't it? And he controlled the race perfectly. We can't deny that. He was never really threatened by Max Verstappen. As soon as Hamilton dropped out of the running, he was never really going to be threatened. So he controlled the race nicely, but I can't get too excited about it, because he was never going to face any competition as soon as Hamilton was taken out of the equation. It's a good drive, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, very good drive. And actually, like, on top of that, I think we were also well, I think Bottas was robbed of the opportunity to properly prove himself, because and also I was when I was tweeting away at the beginning of the race, this is what I was talking about, and I only remembered it again at the end of the race, that yeah, because Hamilton had to go onto the softer tire because of his mistake in qualifying, they were on that mixed strategy. And even though Bottas tried and failed to get past Hamilton at what effectively is the first corner, um, it was still looking good for him, because he was on a much stronger strategy, and that soft tire would not have done as well for Hamilton across the whole race, and Hamilton would have been on the back foot and had to fight for it. So I think Bottas still could have won this race. And Hamilton would have given him more of a fight for it. But I think Bottas was still in a great place to take this win, and it's a shame he got it handed to him effectively, rather than showing that he could outpace Hamilton, even though he was on a stronger strategy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I was backing Bottas for the win anyway before all that happened, because it's just a track that he loves. And I felt like, as you said there, the strategy would have been in his favour. He was it third to victory a couple of years back, so it's something he's done before. We saw last year with Sebastian Vettel starting in third place. You can go from third to the lead. He almost did into turn one. That was a brave one round the outside of Lewis Hamilton, wasn't it? It didn't quite come off. Good job he didn't go the other side of that sausage curb, by the way. That would have been a slam dunk penalty, but kudos for giving it a go. Got to say that for Valtteri. I'm often quite critical of him not trying and not being elbows out enough into turn one, and he was this weekend, so credit for that one. But yeah, I think there's a couple of people in chat have said it, and I've seen it on social media, and Sky are all like, oh, is this the turning point of the championship? Is it the turning point of the championship, or are people just trying to push a narrative and get us all excited for the rest of the season? Because 44 points or something like that is a gap. I don't see that as really any closer. It is 11 points closer than 55, of course, but it doesn't feel any closer.
Yeah, I mean, he has taken a sizable chunk. If they were proper championship contenders, no offense to Valtteri, that would have been a big chunk to take out of him. But they are still miles apart. And actually, I don't know if you've got this plan to talk about later, because Hamilton is now even more precariously close to that 12-point penalty on his license that will give him that race ban. I think that plus the loss is the only thing that's sort of making us think, oh, this championship could come together if Hamilton sort of, I guess, gets what you'd call negative momentum, if it all starts falling away. But he's hard to knock down. He complains on the radio a lot, and he seems like he's lost his will, but he doesn't actually lose his speed on the track. He wasn't particularly fast today, but he was on a strategy that made him have to look after those hard tires for most of the race, so he wasn't really pushing. I wouldn't go running down to the bookies just yet and start putting a sneaky bet on Bottas. I think we're still going to see Hamilton champion and probably a couple of races before the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you and Guardian of the Blind in chat just kind of making the point I was going to make now, that it's maybe a cliche to say it, but the only person that can cost Lewis the championship now is himself, and he is only 2 penalty points away from a race ban. So if he gets a race ban and Bottas gets win and fastest lap one weekend, suddenly championship is back on. So that race ban, it's not impossible. A couple of weeks ago I'd be like, no, that's a long way off, but 2 points can be picked up very easily. A late breaking move on Alex Albon again, or some kind of contact with Alex Albon, not necessarily again, but yeah, that kind of thing can be 2 penalty points. Speeding in the pit lane in the race can be 2 penalty points, and that only needs to be 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit, not returning to the right side of a bollard. It's so easy to pick up 2 penalty points, and he doesn't have any taken off his licence until mid-November. I think it's after Turkey. So he's got to be careful, and I wonder if this is maybe a conversation for another stream, really a proper conversation, but I wonder if he will factor that into his racing, which could actually open the door for Bottas. Maybe Hamilton can't afford right now to get his elbows out like he would do before. So if he's got a Bottas alongside him or a Verstappen, is he going to fight quite as hard? Because he knows if that ends in contact and he's deemed to be at fault, that's a race ban, and championship is potentially looking precarious. And obviously a win as well, I must say as well, not just Bottas. 26 points for Verstappen brings him right back into play as well.
Yeah, and I'm in two minds about this, because on the one hand, Hamilton doesn't really have the mentality of sort of going anything but 100%. And yet the way he talks, and you say we're going to cover this a bit, but he's getting a little bit paranoid about how the stewards view him and whether or not they're trying to slow him down. And if he thinks they are more likely to give him a penalty, will he rein in his driving slightly to make sure he's not going to go over the limit and risk that getting to 12, which, as you say, is not that hard to do. And to borrow a stat from Hazel Southwell, who tweeted during the race, and the numbers might be slightly off, but essentially up to about Austria last year, Hamilton had only got 4 points on his license total, and he got these 10 points in the last year, which is a massive swing around. It's quite strange to see him getting so many infringements so rapidly. So I could see why he's suddenly feeling a bit paranoid, even though I'm not going to entertain the idea that they're out to get him.
Is it 8 points this year? I think Hazel tweeted. I'm just trying to think back to the tweet.
She did say 8, but then she corrected it later, and it's 10 now. But yeah, in the last 12 months.
Don't make mistakes on Twitter, because you'll never be forgiven. I'm not talking about Twitter. I'm having one of them days with it where it's like, do you know what? Get in the bin. I don't want to talk to you today. I'll be back another day gobbing off and being sarcastic, I'm sure. But yeah, Valtteri Bottas, really well-controlled drive. Luck is a word that's being thrown about by some. I think probably in the definition of luck, yeah, but ultimately Hamilton made the mistake and then Bottas capitalised on that. I'm not saying it, don't worry, capitalised on that and drove a faultless race from there. So it's kind of difficult to say he looked into it. On definition, yes, but it's still a very, very good drive from Bottas. And I still think, like I said a minute ago, had Hamilton not had the penalty, I still think Bottas would have been favourite for the win given the strategy. So yeah, I don't like the word luck when it's a little bit like that one, but I get the point people are making. But I think a really good drive from him. What I will say, and it is a bit of a moan, his radio comments afterwards, I've got to say, were very over the top. I loved that I didn't love it when he did it in Australia 2019 at all. It knocked me off then as well. But it was more acceptable then, because as I was saying to Jonty in DMs, or Jonty was saying to me, he's bounced back from a difficult 2018 at that point. This is his first win since Austria, and he's won a race that was not gifted to him, but was made easier by his teammate being removed from the equation. So to come out and give it the whole to whom it may concern is a little bit over the top to me. And then Sky banging this narrative about how he's answered his critics. Do that at the Nürburgring. Do that at Portimao, and then we'll talk about you answering your critics, not on a Sunday afternoon in Russia. You need to do it more than one weekend every 9 or whatever it is. Just my opinion. It'll upset people, but it's just how I feel.
Yeah, I do. I do kind of agree with that. It was a funny place to do it, but you can tell. I guess it's just got to him, hasn't it? He's
Yeah.
clearly reading Twitter, reading articles, whatever, doing exactly what I think Gasly was talking about not doing, or Gasly or Albon. It's just like stay off, just stop looking at things. It'll just drain you mentally. And maybe that's the kind of thing that's contributed to him not doing so well if it's bogging him down. Um, but yeah, you're right. He's kind of got to really show himself in order to sort of talk that brazenly about his critics. And again, another reason it was a shame that a proper fight was taken away from him today.
Yeah, that was all I wanted to say. It's not necessarily a moan, but that's the sort of radio message I'd expect if he wins 3 in a row. And then he goes, right, you lot, what have you got to say now? And then it's like, oh, actually, do you know what? He's probably better than some people are giving him credit for. But not after a race like that. But still, massive credit for capitalising on that look when it fell his way. The famous Sean line or whatever for these streams. I'm always saying it, aren't I? But there you go. Max Verstappen, second place, sorry. Yeah, kind of in no man's land, bless him again, wasn't he? He's always there, wanting to give us a fight in that Red Bull, but it never quite comes that way at some of the races. And he drove well, and there was a moment towards the end where he was closing in on Bottas through traffic and things where I thought, has he looked after his tyres? Have we got a situation here where maybe Max is going to give us to quote Murray Walker, a barnstorming finish? And it just never really came to anything. Almost got the fastest lap. But unfortunately, that got taken away by Bottas in the end, I think, by a couple of tenths. So, good drive from Max again. It's difficult to say too much because, like I say, he was very much on his own, wasn't he? He wasn't challenged by Hamilton. He was never really anywhere near challenging Bottas.
Yeah, this is just how he lives now, isn't it? He's just sort of in his own kind of world, which it makes it more amazing that he does quite frequently get himself between the two Mercedes somehow. But with Albon never really sort of being anywhere near his pace, it's really hard to gauge the Red Bull as well, the Red Bull pace, when you've got two drivers who are just so clearly having a very different time with that car. Um, and also really just because we have kind of no sense of what that Red Bull is actually like, it's hard to sort of understand if Verstappen did have a good race or not. He was there. He was sort of at Bottas's pace, just 10 odd seconds behind. It's really hard. He didn't really see anyone or pass anyone. He was just kind of there.
Yeah, he just did what Max does, didn't he? That's the best way to put it. And I'm not selling him short because he's still got to drive the car well and he's still got to get that result. But he was very much in his own race. But yeah, I mean I still think that lap in qualifying yesterday was absolutely superb. I got very excited on stream when I was doing the qualifying watch along to split the Mercedes when nobody on paper should be getting anywhere near them in Russia. Really set him up today quite nicely. And again, maybe without incidents, he could have taken a fight to Hamilton and co on strategy, but ultimately he's ended up ahead of Hamilton anyway, so it's not too bad. He said he's very happy with second place, given 2 straight DNFs, so maybe he can kick on here for the rest of the season, but I don't see him finishing higher than third in the championship, to be honest, and I certainly don't expect him to finish lower than third, and I don't think Red Bull are going to be finishing any higher or lower than second, so kind of just go out there, lads, and have some fun, is what I feel like saying to Alex Albon and Max Verstappen. Nothing to lose now, have they? And probably not going to gain anything either. So hopefully we'll be able to see lots more racing from Max Verstappen and maybe take it to Mercedes. And like we pointed out the other week, we've got a couple of races now, or 3 races coming up now, 4 with Turkey. We don't know who's going to be quickest there. They could be Red Bull tracks. They could be Mercedes tracks. Hell, they might even be Ferrari tracks. Who knows? So I'm actually really looking forward to this next one of races. I can't lie. Especially when you look at what happened at Mugello, a track we've not been to before, just what that can do. And it's a long time since we've been to the Nürburgring. Hell of a long time since Imola. Never been to Portimao. Turkey could be great as well. I think we've got a very exciting finish to the season. And if Hamilton gets a race ban at any point, which I'm not going to root for, but if he does, and Valtteri Bottas picks up that win, we could have a proper title decider come Abu Dhabi for the first time since 2016. But I think that's me clutching at some straws there and hope over expectation for a championship fight. But yeah, Can't fault Verstappen. I do want to talk about the other Red Bull just while we're on Red Bull, though. Disappointing weekend for Alex Albon. After that podium at Mugello, did you think that was... I said it on stream about 6 times the other Sunday, Stuart, that this is it. This is his chance to kick on and turn his season around. But it just a really lacklustre weekend.
Yeah, he just wasn't really that present, was he? Very strange. I think... But then again, we looked at the 3 drivers on the podium in Monza were essentially were all out of the race at the next race in Mugello. They had quite a terrible run, so you can't really bank on. What am I trying to say? We got these 3 drivers at the top: Bottas, Verstappen, Hamilton, and then this whole slew of midfielders that are sort of mixing it up every race, and you can't really rely on them to be scoring big every race consistently, which is quite exciting. And again, like actually, probably much more than last year. The midfield is the place to look because it's really mixed up. But yeah, it's hard to know what's going on with with Alex Albon. He got into some great races, but some great races with the wrong cars at the wrong end of the field. Hopefully he can return from this, and then when we get into this next run of mystery races, he can pull something back. But we've been saying this for a few years now. I don't know what is happening with this second Red Bull car and why Red Bull can't seem to get Verstappen's teammate to drive to the same level. And actually, Christian Horner came out and defended Albon and sort of as a byproduct defended Gasly, saying they both have the same problem with the car that Verstappen just isn't. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to know what to say about them anymore. It's just they've got a real problem there and they need to fix it.
I had a discussion with Jonty mid race over on the old Twitter sphere in DMs, because it's not the kind of conversation I can have publicly on Twitter because I'm a coward, simple as that. But he said about, I asked what was going with Albon, and he said that the car isn't built for him, it's built for Verstappen. He's always going to struggle. The sort of thing that Christian Horner as well, as you pointed out there, has said the car is built around Verstappen, so it's not really built for Albon or Gasly or any number 2 driver. There's then the talk from other people of him not having the same parts as Verstappen, so the car's inferior. I will always leap to a driver's defence on that, because there's no way that second Red Bull is anywhere near the car or isn't as close to the car that Verstappen's driving as they'd like it to be. Also, it's Max Verstappen, easily. But he was 1.2 seconds off in quali, and he was down in 10th place today with Verstappen in second. I mean, ignore the time. You can knock 5 seconds off that one. So, a minute behind his teammate, nearly a minute and a half behind his teammate after the penalty. That's too big a gap as far as I'm concerned. I think Verstappen 2 or 3 tenths in any car. I think if you put him in any car, he would be 2 or 3 tenths or worth 2 or 3 tenths of a second a lap. Let's say that those different parts and things like that, maybe half a second a lap, so that's 8 tenths. The rest of it's all Albon, and I'm not singling him out. I said this to Jonty, I'm not singling Albon out. It's the same criticism that was levelled at Gasly last year. He's too far off. Yes, the excuses are there and the reasons are there, and that's fine, but that gap is too big, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't have all the data. I might be completely wrong. Red Bull might throw the data out tomorrow and say, look, that car is 1.2 seconds slower than Verstappen's car, but in which case, build a better car, Red Bull. Come on, that's out of order. But yeah, I just think that gap's too big.
It does. It does just feel too big. And, perhaps the slew of parts on, like, as you say, Verstappen's car is worth quite a lot. But I think what concerns me in particular is that we know Albon's a good driver. We know Gasly's a good driver. And then when things go right, we see some really good races from them. And it's hard to kind of pick apart why they can't keep having consistent good races and good points scores with that second car. And you could build a car around Verstappen, but they're not driving like a Ferrari versus a Lada. They're now essentially this, pretty similar cars, and at some point between the driver, the engineer, and the team around that second car, they need to get the driver working with that car. So I don't know how things work in Red Bull. It just seems like everything is so focused around the number one car that sort of the number two car, be it in engineering attention, be it in parts, being in like driver development, wherever the focus is, it seems to be well over to Max Verstappen's side of the garage. But I do agree, Albon is not at least as consistent as Verstappen is race to race. This is a very technical kind of circuit. There's a lot of sort of slow, well, street circuity kind of 90-degree corners and stuff, which are where you will lose the most speed. Flinging cars into high and medium speed corners is tricky, but it's easier to lose speed in the slow stuff. So I think if there's something wrong with the car, if the driver is less skilled, you will see bigger gaps appearing in a track with lots of slow corners.
Yeah, and nobody's denying, just to answer a few people in chat, nobody's denying that car isn't part of the problem. Of course it is. Anybody denying that's part of the problem is doing it to either wind you up or for clicks. It's as simple as that. There's no way anyone could deny it. Red Bull have admitted it. Red Bull don't admit things like that freely. They're saying that car is not the same as Verstappen's. That's fine. The point I'm making is the gap is just too big. I'm not saying drop him, because Daniel in chat making a similar point, I said it in my video on Gasly. I don't think if you put Gasly in that car, he does really any better. Red Bull are still going to be second in the constructors. All right, Albon is 10th. Maybe today Gasly would have finished 9th, but I don't think you're suddenly going to see Gasly challenging for regular podiums alongside Verstappen. I don't think changing the second driver out of the options they have at the moment is going to make any difference. So I'm not saying drop him, but he does need to be stepping up, because we've got some good drivers on the market at the minute that are looking for seats, and that should be the boot up the backside that Albon needs. But at the same time, if you have no confidence in your car, as we see with Vettel this year, as we saw with Gasly last year, maybe you do lose more time. Maybe I'm being unfair. Maybe you do lose more time. You can't push it that hard through a corner. You can't hit the brakes, you're hitting the brakes that little bit early, you're getting on the throttle that little bit later. That all adds up to a lot. So I just don't believe it's all the car. But I think for some reason, Bottas, Albon, everyone's willing to make an excuse, and there'll always be an excuse from somewhere. So I'm going to end the conversation on that as best I can there. Again, I'm not denying there are problems with that car, but that's not the be-all and end-all with Alexander Albon. I want him to turn it around, Stuart. No bloody doubt about that. I want him, when he got 4th in Mugello in qualifying and then got the podium, that's exactly what he needed to be doing. Right behind Verstappen in qualifying on the grid, so it gives Red Bull options. Had Verstappen got past the second corner, obviously, and then picked up the pieces when Verstappen did retire. That's his job, and he did it, and I was so happy for him. But he can't just do that like Bottas. He can't do that once every 8 races. He's got to do it consistently.
I think actually bringing up Vettel is a very good point as a sort of analog there, because we know Vettel is not that bad, and it's and not that bad compared to Leclerc, and yet he is adrift. Be that what the car is being given, or the way the team's treating him, or just maybe his race engineer is a clown. I think we'll probably be on to Vettel at some other point, but in comparing him to Albon, I think we have a lot of data to suggest that Vettel is not a bad driver and has still got what it takes, and yet we're seeing him look like a fool. And I think that same kind of thing can happen to Albon, except Albon doesn't have 4 championships behind him to back up that he's a decent driver. So there could be a lot going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Bottas number 2 at Mercedes as well, should be said. Somebody pointing out in chat. Where's it gone? Varun just saying, I laugh how people accept number 2 role for Albon. That's his job, but slam Bottas for being number 2. Just to clarify, I've not slammed Bottas in this stream at any point. Bottas is number 2, but he's the only one that can challenge Lewis Hamilton, and he's in the best car on the grid by a country mile. And at no point have Mercedes turned around and said his car isn't equal. There's a massive difference here. Albon's car isn't equal, and he's not performing. Put that together, that's why he's in his position. But we could go on about that all day. Quite easy. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll go live and we'll have a chat about Albon between us all at some point. But Sergio Perez, Possibly low-key my driver of the day. We'll get onto that later as well. 4th place, never saw a flipping thing of him really, to be honest, outside of the first couple of laps, unless I've completely forgotten something, Stuart. But really good drive, 4th place, some great points, and kind of given the decision by the team at Mugello and all the talk about his future, kind of the perfect result really, and the perfect time to do it.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree with you. Didn't really see him, but he was there putting in the laps, slotting in right behind the main three, and has kind of he's walked around with a very neutral demeanor this weekend. He doesn't seem sad. He actually seemed very kind of chill and confident after the race. And I don't know if that means anything about whether he's got something sorted out, but I think, speaking of, where drivers' heads are at with what's going on around them, I think he seems now to be at sort of peace with what's going on. He's like, it is what it is, and now just gets his head down and goes racing. That's what it felt like to me. And he had quite a few races where sort of Stroll was outpacing him, and perhaps there was a lot going on since Vettel announced he was leaving Ferrari, and everything was pointing at his seat being lost. And now maybe he's a bit more chill about it. But yeah, glad to see Perez coming forth. We've always rated him here on these streams, and fingers crossed he gets into a good drive this year, even though it kind of looks like he'll be in a Haas or something.
Rowan in chat saying Perez always sneaks up there without anyone noticing. He kind of does, doesn't he? He's a bit like Raikkonen does that as well. Often you sort of 7th, Raikkonen, how? That's, yeah, I like that about Perez, because it means that he's just had a nice, calm, clean race, and he's kept himself out of trouble, which is perfect. But I still say, and this is all I'm going to say, we're not doing Perez speculation. I did that the other day. I said it on Twitter. You saw it, Stuart. In his Sky interview, he had the look of a man who had just had a hell of a race, a great race, and someone who knows that they're going to be in Formula One next year. I'm going to say it now. I think he signed a deal somewhere, and I still think it's going to be Haas. However, Kimi Raikkonen is reportedly or rumoured to be telling Alfa Romeo of his decision this coming week. So I'm just wondering if the two there coincide at all. But I still think Haas is most likely. Just quickly, Stuart, before I turn this into a driver transfer stream, do you think he'll be at Haas next year, or Alfa, or maybe even Mercedes? Who knows?
That would be well, he'd have to go in Hamilton's seat, wouldn't he? Because Bottas is signed up. All signs do seem to be pointing to Haas. There's no particular reason other than everybody saying it. But obviously, those are the seats that look most up for grabs at the moment, and probably of the ones left, the most coveted, unless Red Bull decide to grab him.
Yeah.
Which, they still haven't decided what to do with their second seat yet. So, that's a hell of an opportunity, isn't it? And he'd be a great second seat in Red Bull, to be honest, unless they make him look like a complete fool. But yeah, I think it looks like Haas.
There you go. I've got to say, I can't believe I forgot this. It's literally just come to me. I was looking at Perez. Overtake of the day. How can we not talk about that? Or overtake, for me anyway, of the day at turn 3 on Daniel Ricciardo. Great move on I think it was Danny Rick. It was one of the Renaults, definitely, but fantastic move from Sergio Perez. Nice and ballsy, especially when you think about what happened at F2 in F2, sorry. Previously, it would have been easy for drivers to go, actually, we'll not bother with that this time, just in case. But really good move from Checo, and that probably is why he is where he is, because he kind of checked out from there, 22 seconds or 21.5 seconds up the road. So, yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about that, but that was the exact sort of switchy undercutty move that Jack Aitken went for earlier in the F2 race that ended in tears, although Perez didn't have a puncture. Yeah, really ballsy. Got up there and they just held it out round turn 3. Yeah, good point. Of all the things that Perez talking about him being invisible, yes, great point. And I did manage to queue up the race highlights so I could watch it as you spoke, so I could remind myself. Yeah, that's what we want to see, especially at a race like Sochi where you don't tend to see a lot of that. So every single move is well planned and well executed, except for when it isn't and you end up in the wall.
We moan about no overtaking at Sochi, and then we forget a really amazing overtake at Sochi. I mean, that is typical F1 fans. Absolutely terrible. But yeah, great.
But there have been some good moves today. Every move has sort of been, as I say, kind of well executed, and you do have to. you do have to get it done, don't you? Because it's so hard to overtake you. You have to really make sure you've got it done. And turn 3 is a hell of a corner to do it in.
Yeah, I mean, lots of overtaking when you consider. Was it? I always forget. Tell me the year in chat. I'm sure somebody will know off the top of their head. But it was only a couple of years ago that there were fewer on-track overtakes at Sochi than there were at Monaco.
Hell of a stat, isn't it?
Good stat. I love a good stat.
I was very concerned going into this race because I'd watched the F2 and the F2 cars were struggling a bit to get close and feisty with each other, and that's when you know to be worried. But actually, yeah, as we said at the top of the stream, we saw some good action.
Absolutely did. And Checo, yeah, move of the day. Danny Rick as well raced really well, but he fell. I had him outsider for a podium today. You know, he would have needed somebody to retire, of course, but kind of didn't have the pace in the race that we'd seen over the rest of the weekend with Danny Rick in P5. But actually, pretty decent drive, decent weekend overall, and it's 10 points on the board, and that fight in the constructors is so close between them teams. I'm loving this midfield battle, or the rest of the field battle, or whatever you want to call it. But he did drop 2 places off the line. He got ahead of Max Verstappen initially, didn't he, on that first lap, and then Verstappen got him back, and then Ocon got through. And I've not seen anybody really explain or any replays as to why he ended up losing those 2 positions, whether he just got caught out by Verstappen and then Ocon capitalised on Ricciardo, perhaps having to back out of it or getting a bad exit or something like that from a corner. That's all I can think. But he definitely dropped 2 places, but good recovery to 5th place, and obviously helps a little bit by team orders, the team shifting Ocon out the way because he couldn't get the overtake done on Vettel. Did kind of, well, cock that up quite spectacularly, didn't he? The team orders down the outside of turn 1, locked up, and then didn't rejoin to the right or the left or the middle, as Grosjean showed later on, of the bollard. 5-second penalty, but still, what was he, 10 seconds or 15 seconds up the road from his teammate, despite a 5-second penalty. He's doing the job in that Renault.
Yeah, it was an incredibly solid drive, and those Renaults, they looked quick this weekend. They looked good. They looked like the 3rd fastest car, and I think a circumstance that dropped Ricciardo back gave Perez the opportunity to get that 4th position, which fair play to him. But yeah, apart from that very strange moment where Ocon was trying to let him by, which I thought was just so badly executed all round. It looked like Ocon was sort of backing off from miles ahead. So Ocon lost a bucket of time. Ricciardo lost a bucket of time first through botching turn 2, 3, and then getting that penalty. It just seemed like really badly managed by the team. Actually, while we're sort of hovering around this, those bollards, while I think a good addition to make sure you don't gain any time by cutting that corner, which is very easy to do, very strangely positioned. If you shoot off the corner like straight away, if you basically straight brake, if you lock your brakes into turn 2 and shoot straight on, then fine, they're really easy to navigate. If you do what Ricciardo did and just kind of miss it mid corner, it's very hard to get back across the runoff area and through those bollards, as we saw Grosjean have a go at and just destroy them. So yeah, they might have to rethink that for next year.
Only Rogro could do that. I mean, come on. He hasn't crashed into anyone. The bollards will do this week. That's sorry, Dan. That's me.
I do love that he just wanted to show that he had a go at it. That was as far across as he could get.
But yeah, the bollard thing was bringing out a virtual safety car to replace them. It's like the FIA knew the driver's eyes had lit up and they'd gone, hey, we've got a quicker way out of this one. Quickly deploy the virtual safety car and replace the... I don't think I've ever seen that outside of another incident. That was absolutely bizarre. But yet the Ocon thing as well, because of, just to go back to what you said, losing all that time by backing off where he did, I don't know how late the call came. If he was told get out of the way and then he stops immediately, then at least wait till the next corner and get out of the way on the outside of 3. But that time possibly cost him coming out ahead of Charles Leclerc in the pit stop because he was close. Wasn't that far off. So that was quite I agree with you, really poorly executed by Renault. But I say that, Ricciardo passed Vettel and then got clear of Leclerc and finished P5. So kind of worked out in the end, but it did definitely compromise Esteban Ocon. Charles Leclerc actually P6. I mean, that boy. What? I'm sorry. And people will be like, well, Ferrari's crap. But yeah, what a season he's having. I'm sorry. He's driving so well in that car. Yeah, all right. There's question marks over Vettel's car and what they're doing there. We're not getting into that today. But I think he's driving brilliantly this season. Couple of podiums as well. Yes, luck and all that business. But still a couple of podiums. Some nice points as well today. I would say driver of the day. However, and we're going to talk about the start because we've got to now, he did hit Lance Stroll and put Lance Stroll out of the race, and I can't quite understand how he didn't get a penalty for that. It was, for me, as slam dunk a penalty as you will ever see.
I agree. In terms, you could compare it directly to Hamilton tipping Albon out of the race at Austria. He he got his wheels in, ran wide, and tipped Stroll out of the race. And they didn't even look at it, did they? There wasn't even an investigation. I'm sure they were looking at a couple of other things, but nonetheless, very, very strange thing to ignore. They were too busy thinking about Hamilton's mock starts.
Maybe the stewards just sat there going, nah, their year's bad enough. Let's not go slapping them with penalties as well. I'm sure they didn't. That's a joke. I don't believe that for a second. But, it's not been a great year for Ferrari. So I think Charles Leclerc doing a really good job. But I'm very surprised he didn't get at least investigated. Like you say, as far as I know, they didn't look at it. So, I mean, I can head on over super quickly as well because you sent me the link earlier. Normally I'd have to type it all in so I can go and have a look. But I don't think it was investigated. He's car 16, isn't he? Car 44, yeah. Car 3, car 8, car 23, race lap times deleted, and provisional. No, they didn't investigate it in the end. So there you go.
I think that the joke Ferrari international assistance is a bit worn thin by now, and I'm a bit tired of it. However,
but
with the FIA and FOM, Liberty kind of starting to get stacked with all these old Ferrari boys, it's not going to help that joke go away anytime soon, is it?
And I'm sure that question will crop up when we do Q&A later. We can go on a good old chat about that one. Could be interesting. The other thing at the start, I mentioned it when I did the race rundown. I want to say this in the nicest possible way, but Carlos Sainz made a complete and total prat of himself, didn't he, on that first lap? I mean, that was, wow. If you didn't see it, went straight on at the first chicane, absolutely floored it, trying to come to the left-hand side of the bollard and hit the wall on the inside, and that was the end of his race. But he's so lucky. That could have been so much worse. Coming back onto the middle of the track in front of cars around turn 3, that could have been a horrific accident. So we're very lucky, all jokes aside, that didn't end up worse than it was. He was okay, but just absolutely, I said it on Twitter again, amateur hour is what it felt like. Absolute amateur hour.
Now, to be fair, Sean, that wall is bright yellow and orange, so how could he possibly have seen it? Yeah, I don't know what I don't understand at all. And actually, everyone else has managed it all weekend. The F2 people have managed it, and you know what they're like. I know the cars are slightly smaller, as 400 people told me on Twitter. Just slow down a bit, Carlos. I could see why I know what he's like. You're in the start of the race. You're all G'd up. You know an error in the first few corners is going to cost you an arm and a leg full of positions. That's not really a phrase. And he wanted to get back on track as soon as possible, as Verstappen did, and actually managed to not lose any places at all. Nonetheless, you got to miss the wall. I mean, that's like a fundamental, right? That's more fundamental than don't drive outside the white lines. It's don't hit the wall. That is an absolute definite track limit, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, we've said it, haven't we? That the bollards aren't brilliantly positioned, and the wall does come up very quick. But again, everybody else missed it. I mean, at least Grosjean chose to go through the polystyrene. I mean, we've got to give him credit for that. That ain't the last time I'm talking about Grosjean doing that, because that was just hilarious. I shouldn't laugh at that sort of thing, but it was. But yeah, just clobbered the wall on the inside and just made a right. But to be fair to Sainz, over team radio, his voice was of a guy who knew he'd just made himself look very stupid. He was very, very much, sorry guys, I'm okay. Let me go hide somewhere. I will see you on Wednesday. It's probably how he felt after that one. But all was okay. That's the most important thing. Obviously, it could have been a lot worse. And I don't like that. I hope they find a better solution next year, because I don't... Just the idea of these cars going off at turn 2, sometimes deliberately to avoid contact, which is fine, but then being able to completely floor it to come back on track, it has massive accident written all over it, because all it's going to take is Sainz gets that right, comes on track, and Vettel doesn't react, for example, and he's straight into the back of him, and that's an even bigger accident. The cars are going to be airborne in situations like that, and there's all fears of T-boning and stuff like that. I kind of like the... Is it a Monza second chicane where they kind of have to go down this almost like a road they've laid out with white markers, where they go down, then they turn left and then back onto the track after that chicane? That kind of thing. It needs to be a bigger runoff road, if you like, to avoid that, because that's just there's no markings at that corner to say you must stay between these white lines and then to the bollards. They can cut right to the bollards flat out and then position the car so they can continue their speed, which just doesn't seem very safe to me. A very clumsy way around it, but what other way is there around it apart from sticking a gravel trap there, which at Mugello solved a lot of those problems, caused some chaos, but solved a lot of those problems.
Yeah, it's a tricky runoff area. It's different than that second chicane at Monza, because that just has basically an entire football pitch for them to play with, in which they can force them to go sort of around the perimeter of it before rejoining. Because you sort of go into turn 2 at a funny angle, and most of your kind of running off is going to be quite shallow. You're kind of limited in how much you can make the drivers deviate. But other than essentially removing the wall, I don't know what's behind the wall, just off the top of my head, but and making some space for something, or as you say, put a gravel trap in, it's kind of tricky to know what they can do while forcing the drivers to take some form of penalty,
Yeah.
because they're a bit stuffed. And I think that's I think tarmac runoff areas are good for a lot of things, but they do come with these kind of problems, in that you can just keep your foot down through them and come out better than if you bothered to navigate the corner. And again, you don't want to put down a lot of, bumps, or, sleeping policemen, whatever you call them, because if you fly over those into oncoming traffic, that's the problem we were talking about before.
Yeah. A gravel trap there. That's all. Just put a gravel trap there, and we're all sorted. It'll never happen because of all. I think MotoGP is an issue with that, isn't it, as well? So that's
Just
something.
a shark tank. Stuck a shark tank. There's just a big hole full of water.
Oh yes, that's it. Stuart for FIA president, second time said that this week. Shark tanks instead of gravel traps and concrete runoff. Yeah, but Sainz again made a fool of himself. Stroll, disappointing for Stroll as well. He's had such a good season, and that's 2 DNFs, and neither of them his fault. His crash at Mugello was a mechanical issue, and this time he was wiped out by Leclerc. So, a couple of years ago, people were going, Stroll's rubbish. But this year, you're kind of going, he's kind of unlucky. And all right, Perez is only a point behind him, but you have to remember, through no fault of his own, he's had 2 DNFs. So I've kind of really feel for him today. He'd done all right. Not amazing all weekend, but he'd been all right. Caught out in Q2 with some issues, but yeah.
And considering Perez's pace, I think that car could have done him quite nicely today. I agree. Stroll's having a good season, and I've said this this is my sort of opinion I'm coming around to on Stroll, is that he's now. I mean, it's a lovely problem to have, but he's got the problem of his father kind of framing how everyone looks at him, and it's taking away from the fact that actually he's pretty fast. He's having a good season, and he's having some good races, and I think he does kind of deserve to have that seat. I don't think he deserves to have that seat more than Perez, but I think he's having a good time in that car, and it was a big shame that he didn't get to do anything with it today in a race where he could have got some good points and stayed ahead of Perez in the title quite solidly.
Just had a lovely DM on Twitter letting me know that I'm short-sighted with my views on Albon and Bottas and that my opinion changes too much. You do know, people of this world, you can change your opinion on things. It's totally fine. It's called life. You learn things and all of that. I mean, I don't want to be a condescending prick about it, but you can change your opinion and there's no need to be an arse about it. It's not short-sighted. Albon was crap this weekend. End of. But there are reasons behind that, to be fair. Oh, dearie me. Bloody internet.
It's good to be able to change your opinion. Otherwise, then you just get stuck in a very fixed mindset. And then
if you don't change your opinion, then you're just hating on somebody for something that they were doing a few weeks. Albon's amazing because he finished on the podium last week. If I say that for everyone, he's having bad weekends, then I'm biased towards him. And if I say Bottas is trash, but then he delivers, then I'm hating on him. So your opinion has to change in Formula One because the races change so. Well, apart from Mercedes dominating, obviously, but the races change so much. 1 weekend McLaren are the third fastest team, the next it's Racing Point, the next it's Renault, and there are reasons behind that. So, very weird. That's why I have my DMs closed usually, but there you go.
And for similar reasons, this is why we've got to be open to the idea that Stroll might actually be quite good.
Exactly. Yeah, the counter argument to Lance Stroll actually. He's better than I thought he was. There you go. But thank you for that DM. Massively appreciated. Stick it. 8th and 9th for Kvyat and Pierre Gasly. Gasly disappointed with 9th place. Felt he could have done more. They were caught out. They tried to be clever, didn't they, with the VSC when it came out to replace the bollards, which I still can't quite believe. They pitted him. He did well to get back to 9th place. Some nice overtaking as well, which I think is always nice to see from Gasly, given the criticism levelled at him last year and levelled at him by me last year. See, opinion changing. He's performing, and I can't really fault him. And it's not just about that win at Monza. He's been brilliant this season. He had another very good race, but behind his teammate, Kvyat very nearly getting Mr. Esteban Ocon. He nailed that strategy today, Kvyat. So did Tauri, starting on the hards. 11th place was he, I think, off the line, and just took those hards so far into the race and delivered a very good result for some, I'd say, 4 crucial points. He's been well beaten. Again, forget Monza for a minute. He's been well beaten by Pierre Gasly this season. That's 4 big points and in front of 30,000 Russian fans. So kind of about as perfect a weekend as Danny Kvyat could have hoped for, really. I've been quite impressed with him. He needed a result and he's delivered.
Yeah, he's had a really disappointing season. I've kind of been wondering where the hell he is, really, to be honest. So it is good to see him with some genuine pace, some making the strategy work. And God, I have to say I was kind of right behind him at the end when he was going for that overtake, trying to make something happen with Ocon. It's a shame. It's a shame he couldn't make it work. But yeah, and I'm glad he can make it all pull off at his home race. I hope it's not just the sort of, the half a second the fans give you, and he'll just go back to being kind of anonymous next race. The AlphaTauris, I think, they're in a funny position, aren't they? I think it was probably worth having that gamble with Gasly, just in case the VSC was a bit longer, because maybe he would have got a point or two more. Maybe he might have done a bit better in this particular race, but they're in a position where they can take gambles and look like heroes if they get everything lined up. And in the championship, they themselves are in this kind of no man's land where they're unlikely to challenge Ferrari above them, but are also 55 points ahead of Alfa Romeo. So, they got nothing to lose. So they may as well throw things at the race. And as you say, Gasly got back from that VSC pit stop and then started doing some moves again. So I think he looked good out of it today. I think watching Gasly today was really fun.
Yeah, and I mean, I know he ended up behind Kvyat despite the fact as I've lost you now. Bruno has just pointed out in chat that he's ended up behind Kvyat despite the fact that he started ahead of him. So how's that good? He did make the extra stop, so and he wasn't that far off considering that extra stop, really. I mean, 21 seconds is big. I won't start singing, but 21 seconds is big, but you've got to counter in the pit stop as well there, sort of factor in the pit stop. So, and Darius Lyons in chat, I think this is a good point and a fair point. I haven't got the data in front of me, but it feels like he's making a very, very good point. Is that Gasly doing well? Sorry, I'll start that again. Gasly doing so well makes Kvyat look like he's had a terrible season, even though he's putting the car where it's supposed to be. So is it Gasly, in air quotes, because I know it's not possible, but in air quotes, out driving or outperforming the car, and Kvyat's just doing what the car is capable of, or delivering all he can from it? It's a fair point.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny one, that isn't it? And I don't obviously Alpha Tauri aren't in that same position as Red Bull, where they're kind of all or nothing behind one driver. So they haven't just gone and constructed a car around Gasly to go for a title or anything. But he does seem much more comfortable in that car. And again, it's another thing that's hard to pick out whether it's just Gasly is a different level to Kvyat or the car is just not suited to Kvyat or what. I think if you were running AlphaTauri, you'd have to benchmark against Gasly, though. You'd have to wonder just how many points that team could have if Kvyat was able to keep up with him
Mm.
more regularly. But as I've said a lot about AlphaTauri and Toro Rosso, I kind of wonder what it is they want. What are their goals for the year? Would they want to be? I suppose they want to be as high as possible, but they're not. They're aiming to be solid midfielders, aren't they? So, and I guess to be a kind of honing ground for the next Red Bull drivers,
I
even
think
though they are full of previous Red Bull drivers.
yeah, I know, I agree. I think if you offered them P7, a comfortable P7 in the championship at the start of the year, they would have taken it. That's kind of where they feel to me. And if sixth place would be a really good season for AlphaTauri, is sort of how I see them. So, yeah. I mean, I think Fiat could have been better this year, but that comment from Darius has got me thinking now that I might go and do some digging on that. But we've talked about Albon. Obviously, we'll fly through this. We're going for an hour now, so I need to get through the rest of this. Just so much happened at the start of the race, and there's so many things I wanted to say about it all that we've kind of hit the hour already. But Giovinazzi, 11th place, actually really good drive. I know not points, but pretty impressed with Gio there with P11, and Kevin Magnussen up in 12th. He had a great start to K-Mag, didn't he? Up to 9th place, I think. So solid drives from both of them in cars that are not great this year. So I think, again, not points, but I think both of them can be very happy with that performance. And it's not because there are a ton of retirements, because we only lost Sainz and Stroll.
Yeah, in particular, watching Gio was quite a revelation, wasn't it? We were watching him overtake cars that we'd normally expect him to have nothing to do with, and tantalizingly close. I mean, not really in seconds, I guess, but well, when he got, it's hard to know because he's one lap down, but he one position away from getting himself a point. I think he can be happy with today, especially he was one of those drivers who did manage to make some moves happen on track.
Nice little battle there, actually. Giovinazzi was 12 points, because we didn't see much of it on TV, but 12.7 seconds behind P10. But then you've got Magnussen 1.9 behind, Vettel a second behind, and Kimi Räikkönen 8 tenths behind. So they were all pretty close come the end of the race. So that would have been quite fun to watch some of that. But yeah, Seb Vettel, Kimi Räikkönen together. Oh, together again, bless them. 13th place for. I can't wait to see him in Aston Martin next year, Stuart. I'm just going to say it. I don't care. I can't wait for him to get out of that bloody Ferrari, get in at Aston Martin, and just be able to relax and hopefully be the Sebastian Vettel that I'm determined is still in there. God damn it, I'm determined he's still got it. I'm going to keep saying form is temporary, class is permanent, and I'm sure he's still got some very good speed in there. But that Ferrari's diabolical. So P13. Yeah.
We're seeing Vettel and Raikkonen together on track quite a lot this year, aren't we? I mean, it's a bit depressing, but they do seem to end up in roughly the same part of the circuit, which says a lot, to be honest, about both of them.
Yeah, disappointing years. I can't see. I don't want to get into transfer speculation too much. Driver move speculations too much. But I can't. People saying Kimi's set to announce he's doing one more year, but does Kimi want to do that? I know he didn't line up 20th, but he qualified 20th and racing to finish 14th. Want that really? Can he be bothered with that? I don't know. Just doesn't. But then Kimi just loves being out in a car, doesn't he, and racing? So he probably will race till he's about 73. But yeah, I can't think of much. Sebastian Vettel had a poor weekend, really, when you think about qualifying. Had that accident. I do wonder if some of that, because I don't feel like his pace was there. Sort of the pace he's delivered today was what we'd seen through the weekend. I'm not saying he would have been up on the podium, but I feel like he just seemed quicker through practice. So I don't know how much smashing his car up in qualifying and the new parts that had to go on have affected the balance or anything like that. trying to make excuses for him.
Yeah. There is often that trepidation with drivers when they step into a car that's been rebuilt overnight, especially when he hasn't had a session in which to kind of shake it out a bit. But that only goes so far. And this is Sebastian Vettel, after all, who has a lot of experience and didn't necessarily suffer from that kind of problem when he was in a championship contending car. There's only so much you can say about him these days, isn't there? It's just it's just really hard watching. He's just nowhere. And I don't know how many times this season he's not scored a point. I don't know how far down he is in the championship. It's just hard to watch. I don't know what you can say about him anymore. And we've spoken about, mentality and mindset, and I absolutely agree. Getting himself in that Aston Martin team, a fresh start, a team that's genuinely exciting. We've been excited by Racing Point all year, despite their slight dodgy dealings, and we're excited to see what Aston Martin can do. Yeah, I mean, it can't come soon enough for him.
Vettel's results this year: 10th retirement, 6th, 10th, 12th, 7th, 13th retirement, 10th and 13th. That's that's worse than I thought, actually. But a couple of people in chat, Mohammed A and Guardian the Blind, making the point that he was possibly sacrificed to help Shah with his strategy. He was kind of in that fight with the Renaults and was there holding them up. So maybe that's part of the reason why he is down in 13th. In fact, Guardian the Blind saying he shows some decent pace. And Daz Dennis says his car was just slower at a minimal speed around a corner than Charles Leclerc. So some theories out there, but it's a good point on the strategy. That did work out quite well for Ferrari. Did I just praise Ferrari's strategy? I don't like this year. This is a weird year.
I think they just stumbled into that. I can't imagine they did that on purpose.
Yeah, not a deliberate thing. Oh, bless them. Let's not get into Ferrari bashing, for God's sake. I'll be in enough trouble after this one. Lando Norris 15th. Sky seemed to think that there was a little bit of contact between him and Sainz at the first corner, and he was complaining on the radio of some issues with the car, so maybe that's why he struggled with pace today. I'm questioning it because I've not seen a replay.
Yeah, I had a little look at that. He got a little tap coming out of coming out of the turn 2 chicane, and then was right in the path of Carlos Sainz. So I had to kind of navigate him. Was a bit worried about debris, but I think he got a bit of damage from, I'm not sure who, but someone who he tapped through that first couple of corners. But was definitely not running at the pace that he'd shown earlier in the weekend. So a big shame, actually, because 3 free practice, it did look like McLaren and Renault were going to be the two big teams of the midfield this race, and they didn't score any points, which has cost them hugely in the championship standings.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite excited after quali because you had McLaren, Renault, and I was very excited by that. I thought we were in for, or in some order like that. I was quite excited for what that was going to be. Obviously, the top 3 got me very excited for this race, and then that one as well. I thought we were in for quite a scrap, but obviously, Sainz out in turn 1, Norris struggling. It never really came to anything, and you're right, it has cost them in the constructors. I mean, it's 100, and they're still on 106 points, but now Racing Point have 104, and Renault are on 99. So that little gap they had has disappeared very quickly, and that's the problem with this, or the beauty, I guess, of this midfield fight, is that one bad race and you find yourself in trouble. Worth noting as well, Racing Point would have 119 points without their penalty, just because I like to mention that. So they'd be 13 points up the road in 3rd place. There you go. I don't know why I felt the need to mention that. I just did.
It's a good point. On outright pace, Racing Point are still ahead, but I am actually. I'm often surprised just to see that McLaren are still there in 3rd place. They're having a great year. They got good pace, and I feel like we've almost forgotten the dark years, which they felt like they'd never get out of.
It's nice to see them back up there, isn't it, in the constructors, even if it is partly because of Ferrari's problems. But I just had the delegation report through, so I'm kind of half reading that as well.
I was just going to say Mercedes engines next year for McLaren. It'll use up all their development points to put it in. But with this chassis, they could look good next year. I think McLaren Aston Martin battle will continue through next year.
Scrutineering all appears to have gone through okay at first glance, so no penalties. So there we go. So that's good. I think we will. There should be. I haven't seen any more, but I assume there'll be some kind of release at some point to say that Racing Point have been told off and blah blah blah. But yeah, I don't know if that whatever. It doesn't matter, does it? They're not doing any different, are they? So Latifi 16th, beating George Russell again today, which is good to see for him. I'm going to say it again for the fifth week in a row. He's actually doing better this season than I thought he would. Didn't see a huge amount of him. We did see a lot though. And I've purposely done this. We've done the negative on Albon, but I've got to say this. Norris, Albon and Russell, all this talk about this little group, these old Bezzy mates, and they're doing all this on Tinternet and streaming, and I sound like a right old man on this Twitch or whatever they're calling it. And this little group that everyone seems to absolutely love. Seeing them fighting on track was brilliant. That was such good racing. It's just kind of gutting that it was for like 18th, 17th place, something like that. But it was really fun to watch, and got Williams some airtime, which is always nice to see.
I loved that battle, and it was serendipitous that through sort of circumstance and some pit stops and strategy and a bit of damage that they all ended up sort of bunched together on the track. Cars that actually you normally wouldn't see in the same place at the same time, and they really wanted what I think at the time was something like 15th position. It wasn't like anything points worthy at the time. That was great fun. Can't wait to see the PowerPoint on that one.
PowerPoint. He'll have one, he will. Yeah, I think that was. We talked about Perez for move of the day. Was that battle of the day? Do you think? I did quite enjoy the Renaults versus the Ferraris, but I think that was the most fun battle, definitely.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it sort of swung back and forth a bit, and then one car, I can't remember the order it went in. I think it started with Norris up front, but not having any DRS and just being slipstreamed by the others, and then it all mixing together. It was great to see, and I'm continue to be impressed by Russell, who will grab whatever is available to him at any given point in that Williams.
Yeah.
I'm desperate for him to get a point, just something for his for how hard and how well he's doing this year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I didn't talk to you after Mugello. Were you as gutted as everyone else was that he couldn't get that 10th place? Because the second restart or the second start, the standing start after red flag, kind of screwed him over quite badly, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was really gutted. I was just thought it's so hard for him to get anything with that Williams other than like kudos, and to be in a position where he could, he kept his nose clean. He had good pace in Mugello, and it was, I think, sitting on 2 points at the time before the last red flag. Yeah, and it got taken away from him. So fingers crossed. We got a number of tracks left, including Imola, which I think could throw a few people for a loop. Possibly not much overtaking, as we've discussed, but mistakes, gravel traps, narrow track, could see some sort of Mugello-like attrition. Could be his opportunity.
Yeah, it's not a British bias either. He's just a nice guy, but also he's just doing such a job in that Williams, and he has got so much talent. The fact he hasn't got a point is almost criminal, but that's the way Formula One goes. If you're not in a very good car, you're not going to be regularly scoring points. So when those chances fall your way, you've got to take them. And that, Robert Kubica did last year, didn't he? He got that point in Germany. And Russell could have in Mugello, but didn't take the opportunity. So I want to see him get a point. That's pretty much everybody, I think. We've kind of talked about Grosjean a little bit. I'll mention him again just so that we make sure that people know we have mentioned him. I think the highlight of his race was taking the bollard out at turn 2. I don't really remember seeing much else of him, but a bit of a weird weekend for him. He was complaining in practice the car wasn't right, and he was getting really angry with it and frustrated, and then they just gave him the car he needed out of nowhere almost. They just nailed the setup, and he got a decent quali in, and then ended up 17th in the race. And I'm talking about, for the 15th time, how spectacular driving through the bollards was.
It was pretty spectacular. I mean, yeah, slow-mo of the race. I think if you go style points for Grosjean, I'm just Grosjean's. I like Grosjean a lot, and I was particularly warm to him when he was like so happy for Gasly and didn't even want to talk about his own race. But he's another one of those drivers where I'm just like, are you enjoying yourself? What are you getting out of this? Is this what you want to do with your life? It's just, I don't know. I don't know. I have nothing much to say about Grosjean. He was there. He came 17th. He's a good driver trapped in a bad driver's body.
And a good chef. We love you, Roman.
That's it. Start a new. This is your new career. Go do that.
I suppose what I could say on Grosjean is with this speculation about Perez to Haas, is he the one to make way? Definitely. I mean, it could be both drivers, but if they do stick with one of their drivers, even Dan, so don't call me a Grosjean hater, even Dan, who is the commander-in-chief of the Grosjean army, will tell you that he's on borrowed time in F1 and he can't quite believe he's kept his seat as long as he has. So, is this it? Same conversations we had last year and probably the year before.
God, we've been having this. This is the thing. I want to say, yeah, well, obviously, yeah, he's going to move way for Perez to go, but he never goes. He's always
He's like Raikkonen.
there year on year. It's like, what does he know? What does he know about Gene Haas? What secrets? What dossier does he have? But in all seriousness, I think this is probably it, and he'll go and I don't know, do some sports car or something. There's plenty of opportunities for him. I think he's just a little bit F1 cursed.
F1 cursed. Good driver trapped in a bad driver's body. That's why you keep coming back, everyone, and you know you do. That's exactly why. We'll do driver of the day, and we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton in a moment as well, and his comments after the race, and then we'll take some of your questions. But first of all, please do drop a like on the stream. We've got 1,100 watching and 174 likes, so let's get that like tally up a little bit. That'd be massively appreciated if you could do that, and as usual, helps the channel out and all of that business. And please do subscribe if you're new, so you don't miss out on any content coming up in the next few weeks. But Stuart, who is your driver of the day? Chat, pop your surname for your driver of the day in the chat as well. That'd be massively appreciated. Get that one in and I'll read some out. But who are you going with, Stuart? It's quite a tough one today, actually.
It's quite a tough one. I think if he hadn't made that clumsy error, it would have been Ricciardo. So I'm going to go with Perez. Great anonymous race with that turn 3 overtake to put the cherry on top.
It kind of coming to that conclusion, but in a very different way. If it hadn't have been for the fact that he wiped out Lance Stroll and got away without a penalty, I would have said Leclerc, but I'm going to have to say Sergio Perez. Kind of come to the same driver in different ways. I like that, but I think Perez was mega today. And like I say, Leclerc driving the wheels off that car, but I've always said I won't ever give driver today to somebody who has taken somebody else out of the race or been slapped with a penalty they deserve or not got a penalty they should have got. So Perez, but yeah, if Bottas had won this race in a straight fight with Hamilton, then it'd be a very different story for driver of the day. Let's put it that way. That's why I can't give it to Bottas, because he wasn't challenged. So difficult to say. We did control it very well, so he does deserve a mention for that. I think Danny Rick's a good shout as well, to be honest, Stuart. But yeah, Perez for me. Good old Checo. Just that overtake.
Yeah, it was a great overtake, especially considering what we witnessed a few hours earlier. I've just noticed the scroll at the bottom of the stream. Did Verstappen get it officially for what? He did it for what? I mean, he was fine, but not inspiring.
He turned up. That's enough for fans.
That is true. He does
It's why I'm so glad that when people say, "Oh, they should give points for driver of the day." No, they should never give points for driver of the day if it is a fan vote. If it's like a room of people, experts and pundits making the decision, absolutely fine. But if it's a fan vote, you cannot give points for driver of the day, because that pretty much guarantees Max Verstappen 22 points across the course of a normal season, which would be possibly enough to win the championship with everything else that he does. So, no points, people, for driver of the day. But yeah, Verstappen did get the official one. Mashiro's gone with Perez, as has Darius and Charlotte. Uzair goes with Leclerc. Nuke Dukem says Leclerc easily. Perez for Salah. Pumpkini says Perez. Nikolai's gone with Magnussen. I don't know why I found that so funny. I'm so sorry. Musav says Ricardo. Chucklebro goes with Magnussen. Molly's gone with Perez. Scroll down a little bit further. George has gone with Magnussen. Quite a few going for Magnussen. I mean, the start was pretty impressive, and P12 is a solid result, but I can't say I give K-Mag driver of the day.
I've just spotted the B, which we didn't talk about.
We will talk about that in a minute as well. Eric says Leclerc. Taru says Perez. Sandy's gone with Perez as well. Stephen goes with Leclerc. Daniel Philpott's gone with Mika Salo. Brave call, Daniel Philpott. Trust you. There you go. Defs Perez says Pluis. Oh my God, I need to stop butchering names. James says Perez. Adam's gone with Kvyat or Leclerc. Daz has gone with Bottas. Couple more. Salah says Perez. Mike's gone with Perez. Varun's gone with Leclerc. That's 3, Sean. That's not a couple. Pirate Ninja said Van Dorn. Don't get me started on stuff. Because, hey, there could be a story there if Lewis Hamilton gets a couple more points. Kvyat for Findlay, and Astro's gone with Hamilton. So there you go. That is your driver of the day. Yeah. I don't know. I was trying to get over that name. I don't know why it hit me. It just did. Yeah, please do drop a like on the stream, like I say. Massively appreciate it. If you've got any questions for us, please do pop them in chat and we'll answer a few before we round things off. But we've got to talk about... We'll do the B in a minute. We'll do the funny bit in a minute. But we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton's comments saying afterwards that he... Essentially that he feels the stewards are out to get him because he seems to be getting these penalties that he doesn't like and doesn't agree with, that perhaps other drivers aren't getting, is how he feels. Kind of talking about them trying to stop him. Is that a guy that's hopped out of the car, massively frustrated with what happened? Because it's kind of... I think the team are probably as much to blame, if not more to blame, than Hamilton. He said to them over the radio, can I go down there and do the practice start? And they said yes. And if your team are telling you yes, then as a driver you think that's fine. So I don't really think there's a huge amount of blame on him. So I think there's some of that frustration there. But I don't... If the stewards are out to get him and stop him winning championships, they're doing a very bad job at it. A very bad job at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sort of entertain any of those weird conspiracy theories, but he does go down. It's not the first time he's gone down that kind of route where he thinks people are out to get him. Maybe for reasons outside of Formula One that sort of happened in his life and stuff. There were times when he was at there was the infamous time when he was back at McLaren. He seemed to be getting a lot of penalties, and he made that Ali G joke about why he seemed to be called to the jury room so often. And there's sort of shades of that here where he just thinks they're trying to slow him down. And I would probably agree that there are many people who wish he wasn't quite so fast, just in terms of entertainment. But I don't know. It's tricky. I don't really like him going down the road. I especially don't like him doing it so publicly, especially when you contrast it with that Ricciardo message in which he's sort of like, okay, got the penalty, my fault, let's just go faster and make up for it, which he did, and he managed to pull out a gap so the penalty didn't count. And as outside of the race, sort of when he's calmer and more composed, the kind of message we get from Hamilton is a lot more of the never give up kind of mentality. We can do it, guys. And actually sometimes we get that when he does come back and win a race from adversity, but it doesn't sound great when he gets in this kind of mentality very publicly and starts thinking that all is lost. It's not particularly inspiring, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is I always give drivers slack. Some would argue too much slack in some cases. Let's not go down that road. But I do tend to give drivers slack when they say things during a race or after a race, because it is very much heat of the moment. If Hamilton had come out on Wednesday and said that, I think he'd be open to a lot more criticism because he's actually had time to process it all and still come to that conclusion. But to say that directly after the race. It's heat of the moment, it's frustration, anger with himself, anger with the team, disappointed that he couldn't go for the record this weekend and that, that pole hasn't been turned into victory. Do you see what I mean? I think heat of the moment, and with time to reflect, I don't think he'd ever come to that conclusion again. I just think you can understand why he feels that way, because the penalties he's had the last few races have been weird. There's no, the pit lane closed one was an odd one because of where the boards were, and the penalty today to get 2 for the same thing was odd as well. So you can sort of see how he's coming to that point with frustration, but I don't think given time to really think about it, he would come to that conclusion. I think it was just heat of the moment. Yeah,
I do agree with you in general, and in this case as well. But I do think we always need to take into consideration the fact that these guys are currently doing an extreme sport, so they're pumped full of adrenaline, and they are going to be more emotional, be it angry or deflated or whatever. It's you normally see it when I guess when they get handed a penalty or when they get into sort of an on-track incident with someone and they get furious at the person in a way that they wouldn't when they've calmed down and looked at the replays and read the steward's notes or whatever. Steward's notes. Yeah, it's just it's a bit deflating that this is his sort of natural reaction, is to go into this big slump and be like, well, don't talk to me on the radio. There's nothing we can do now. Whereas some people, I think, would be like, okay, well, we've lost whatever 25 seconds or 30 seconds, well, 10 seconds, I guess, and a handful of places. What do we need to do now? How do we get back into this? I think, which, it is what it is. People react how they react, but I think in terms of when you look as an audience person to a sports star, that's the kind of sort of mentality you want to see. And I think, not to speak on his behalf, I think that's the kind of mentality he would want to project if he has in a moment where he's able to compose himself and think about what he's saying.
And I can understand as well, sort of Hamilton fans out there on social media feeling like the world's against him. I get the point they're making, and it's a fantastic point that needs to be made. Unseen Shadow 13 said, I haven't really seen Hamilton get a penalty he did not deserve. The penalty today, he got 2 penalties for the same thing because he did it twice, and that's a slam dunk because he's broken the rules. And the penalty in Monza, he entered the pits when the pit lane entry was closed. Whether you see them boards or not, that is what the penalty is. These are weird penalties to get, but they are completely within the rules. It's not them against Hamilton. If Bottas had done that and Monza had done that today, he would have got the penalty. Verstappen, he would have got penalty. Albon, Ricciardo, Gasly, any of them do that today or in Monza, it's a penalty.
Yeah, you can't really disagree with that. The Monza one was definitely a penalty, but that was more on that kind of just like panic last minute judgment. That was a matter of timing, and he just broke the rules in a kind of reactive way. This one today was particularly weird because it was premeditated and he asked the team if it was okay. So it did seem like a complete blunder, really. They mucked up completely. And he is probably going to be thinking about the fact that due to that, he is now in this position where he has, as we said, he has to be extra careful because of how many penalty points he's got.
Colin Chat saying they are discretionary penalties. They absolutely are, but he's still broken the rule that is quite clearly written and went out in director's notes that then allows the stewards, if they want to give him a penalty. There's no big conspiracy here. And Kat saying, everyone says something stupid when frustrated. Why do people expect sports drivers or celebs to be better than themselves? I certainly do not. I say a lot of stupid things. Actually, not when I'm frustrated. I just generally say a lot of stupid things. So there you go. But I agree, it's a heat of the moment thing. I don't think it's going to get blown up. We know it's going to get blown up. Lewis Hamilton gets your clicks. It's as simple as that, doesn't he? We know that. So,
and I would reiterate with you, give them time to reflect as well. I think the statements and the way they say them in the heat of the moment is not always how they would prefer to say it. And like with you, I do that I do that on things like Twitter as well. If someone annoys me, I will probably react in a way that I would a few minutes later think, probably shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, and also listen to what a driver says. There's a massive difference between crash with and crash into. Anyway, let's not get back into that one today. That's just like, wow, comment section, boom. Anyway, bees. You wanted to talk about bees, Stuart. Valtteri Bottas apparently got hit by a bee in the visor in turn 1, and that's why he locked up and went and missed his overtake on Hamilton, as I understand it, just looking now.
I am
Baffled.
interested in how Bottas is such a good entomologist that he recognized a bee at 200 miles an hour, like 1 inch from his face. What incredible eyesight he has. That's a brand new one, isn't it? I've not, of all the excuses
We've had
I've
seagulls,
heard,
haven't we?
we've had seagulls. Seagulls we definitely all could see. We've had fire extinguishers going off in the cockpit. We've had spanners falling between people's legs. But this, a bee in the visor, is a new one on me.
Somewhere, or I like to think that somewhere in the world there is someone now rewinding the onboard and getting return. Actually, I think you'll find it's a wasp.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a wasp somewhere going, screw you, it was me. I'm not a bee, how dare you? I mean, it is an odd one, but I like the story.
Actually, it's an Asian hornet, and he should have reported it because those are invasive species.
Actually,
5 penalty points.
it was Uncle Steve in a bee costume. What is it with Steve?
Amazing. That's your go-to name, Sean.
It is. It was Steve in testing. I think I said that the other day. Steve and Paolo are on holiday. Yeah. Anyway, anyone who didn't watch testing streams, that'll mean nothing to. But forgive me for testing streams. We're generally delirious by about day 3. Only 3 days of testing next year, though, Stuart. So we shouldn't be quite as delirious. I mean, what is it to test?
Test, have they? Yeah. Test at Mugello.
Go on, compose yourself. Let's get this stream back on track. We don't want to talk about bees anymore or Uncle Steve. I'll do super chats, then we'll take your questions. So please do pop them in. I'll scroll back as well and pick up some other ones. Yeah, I can't read names. The X-Chocks or the Zotchovra. Thank you, either way, for your contribution. Massively appreciated. Thank you for that one. Charlotte Taylor, thank you for yours as well. Says, I'm getting 2016 vibes from Lewis. Things not going his way, then saying silly things, e.g. Rosberg not being German. He needs to get his head together. Interesting take. Yeah, he did. Rosberg, people disagree with me a lot on this. Rosberg did get in his head in 2016.
It's true, actually. I think that was in actually the whole 1, 2, 3 years. Did they only battle together for 3 years? Goodness. Well, I guess 2013, but the whole 3 years, that was a contributing factor to there even being a championship battle at all, I think. Obviously he had the pace as well, but part of that was also just getting under his skin a lot more.
Thank you to Razza as well for your 2 contributions. Actually says, how about those few laps of the lads dunking it out? Man, was that fun. Norris, Albon and Russell. Yeah, as we said earlier, that was probably the most fun battle of the race. That was great to see. And maybe actually, and perhaps we're getting ahead of myself here, maybe shades of what we can look forward to in the coming years if these new rules get right. Maybe Norris, Albon and Russell fighting. Obviously, hopefully, Albon fighting with Russell and Norris up towards the sharp end of the grid, maybe for top end points, maybe even for wins and podiums. We don't know what's going to happen in 22, probably Mercedes domination just to upset everybody, but yeah, maybe little shades of the future there. So I think we've got some great young drivers out there and I can't wait for the future, I've got to say. Thank you as well to Akuya for being a member for 10 months in a row. It's just popped up, so thank you very much for that one. Appreciated. Let's have a scroll through then, see what you guys are saying in chat before we wrap it up. The Raccoon Ghost said it was a Christian Hornet.
Ray.
Comment of the day. You win. I'm going to get a sound effect for comment of the day and we'll have all sorts of stuff on screen. Ticker tape and everything because that's very, very good. Seb was compromised
more
by
jingles.
Yeah, more. Oh, God. Gaming with Steve. Steve! Says Seb was compromised by the strategy and was able to hold off Ocon and Danny for 7 to 8 laps. Yeah, we covered that briefly earlier. But yeah, we'd forgotten about that, to be honest. So thank you to everyone that's pointed that one out. Absolutely. Astro wants to know a little bit about Gio's future. Quickly, Stuart, do you think he's got any chance of hanging on to that Alfa Romeo seat with the likes of Hulkenberg being available, Perez, maybe even Kevin Magnussen becoming available as well if Haas decide to make changes, young Ferrari juniors coming through?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the drivers, it's the Ferrari juniors we've got to worry about. Particularly if Mick Schumacher does end up winning the championship. I know there's Alfa Romeo as well, but I don't know. I mean, he's good. He's fine. He's just not sensational, I guess. he's just Gio. Yeah, he's probably going to go, isn't he? He's probably going to make way for someone else, which might be a shame, but it's very cutthroat, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not enough teams for all the drivers out there, and there's a lot of talent. So, yeah, Daniel Philpott on that says Mick Schumacher confirmed F1 seat next year? ? Thoughts? I think I said it yesterday. I think he's looking more and more nailed on for that. The noises from Ferrari and the noises from Alfa seem to be leading that way. They're talking reportedly about if he finishes top 3 in the championship, he will get the chance at Alfa. He's got a great chance at winning it by the look of it, although today's result maybe changes things a little bit, but he's got a great shot at winning it. So I think he's probably nailed on for that, unless something kind of his season goes awry from here, but not many races left in F2, so I can't see that happening. But I think Mick Schumacher pretty much nailed in. He's a quick guy, plenty of room for growth as well, a lot of potential. I put it to you guys in chat, I'll put it to anybody. I do wonder how much of that is the weight of his name that is getting him into Alfa Romeo next year. Not to say that he is not quick enough, not to say that he's not talented enough, but he's not been destroying Callum a lot this year. And I wonder if some of it is the name, what they can do with that, the marketing, the story. I do. People may not agree, but I do think teams take that into account when it comes to picking drivers, what they can do. You know, yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is a fantastically quick guy, and that's why McLaren have gone for him. But also, they know it's meme team at McLaren next year, and they can have a lot of fun with that. So, yeah, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't at this point, to be honest.
I think I tend to agree with you about, well, particularly about, how good he is. We have after all these years, I'm now in a position where I can actually talk about junior drivers because I've got a few seasons of watching things like F2 and stuff under my belt. But in terms of F3 and F2, we haven't seen Mick have a full season where he looks like he's just the guy to beat. He has the seasons where if he wins this F2 season and the way he won F3, they've both been a sort of second half. I mean, very good second half of the seasons, but it wasn't a sort of consistent all the way through. He sort of had this kind of like second wave, whereas Callum Ilott just seems like the guy to beat. If you want to say who's hot in F2 right now, you Callum Ilott, and he's had some unfortunate circumstance. But I think if Schumacher didn't have that name, you would be looking at Callum Ilott, no question.
Ooh. Bet you wouldn't say that on your channel, would you?
But Schumacher is very, very good, and I'm very excited. If he does move into F1, I'd like to see him get some consistency together. And he's exciting to watch, as is Schwartzman. But I think he needs another year just to. I think it just for his own good, to be honest.
Bradley Stanlick says, "Will you be my sister?" There's a number of things wrong with that question.
Me or you? I won't. I'm an only child, so I don't really know how to do that. So
I've got a brother and a sister, and that's more than enough, I can assure you. So thank you, but no thanks. Findlay says, where do you see Gio ending up? I think probably Formula E or somewhere like that. That sounds really awful, like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Y1521T21B5. Says, why should a driver shoulder all of the penalty when directly misled by the team? It's a fair question. I'm just going to come out and say it. It's such a cliche line, but it's true. And it's such a Lewis Hamilton line as well. You win as a team, you lose as a team. They are all a team. So if Lewis Hamilton sticks it in the wall, the team, or gets, collides with Sergio Perez, for example, the team also get that penalty. It compromises them in points as well. And when the team make a mistake, the driver suffers as well. It's a team sport. And I think it's only right. If you start separating out penalties, you just open up a can of worms, aren't you, potentially?
Yeah, and I do tend to agree. I wish there was a way of maybe being able to separate it out more. And then you get into situations like with Racing Point, where their penalty for their sort of brake duct infringement only affected the team, even though the drivers used those brake ducts to score points. And it's hard to unbundle these things. And when you do try and unbundle them, I think it throws up more questions than if you just make them all take the hit together. Yeah, because kind of what you said, just with more words.
Warren Evans says Haas have given more than one indication they're looking at young drivers for next year. Ilott coming as well. That's another good point. Mick Schumacher to Alpha because he's maybe Ferrari's next, or at the moment they see him as their immediate one to back for the future. But Callum Ilott to Haas alongside Perez. That could work very nicely. Also, nice short names, which will be handy for graphics, which will cheer Lewis up. He'll be happy with that one. Lewis Bloomfield, graphic designer, he'll be happy with that. But yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. Ilott and Perez, for example, at Haas would be a good lineup. Lots of experience. We know that Perez is quick and consistent. And if you throw in Callum Ilott, who's a rookie, someone to learn from there as well. So, yeah, I mean, last time a young hotshot went up against Sergio Perez, it was interesting. So, yeah, do Haas want to open that can of worms up?
I think that would be good for Haas, because I think Haas are an incredibly boring, characterless team, and their driver lineup is some drivers. I think Magnussen's pretty good, but it's not very exciting. And you stick some hot shots in there, and for the time being, make them this kind of Ferrari training ground. And just bring some life into the team. Make the team. I don't know if Haas are particularly excited about Grosjean or Kevin Magnussen, but when you've got like an Ilott and a whoever in there, I think they could be rejuvenated the team, and people will look at Haas and be like, "Oh yeah, I want to see how Ilott does," because he nearly, or maybe did, win the F2 championship. And I think I know Haas have had a bad year, but I think it's interesting that I think people are more excited about Alfa Romeo, who tend to be worse. They're not doing worse this year, but tend to be worse than they are about Haas, who are normally midfielders, but are actually just quite boring.
I get the point. I think we discussed it before that, what are their goals in the sport with Haas? It's difficult. You know what Alpha are there for. They are at the minute pretty much helping Ferrari out with juniors as well as trying to score points. Obviously, you know that Williams want to get back to the front. Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull want to win championships. McLaren want to get up there. We know Aston Martin next year, Renault or Alpine, they're going to want to be challenging. And you sort of look at Haas, a bit like Alpha Tauri, and you're sort of like, why are you here? I'm glad they're here.
Yeah.
I'm really glad they're here. We want an American team, and also we need the teams, quite frankly. But you do look at why? What's your goal? So I get that. I really do. Nuke wants to know chances of Lewis Hamilton getting a race ban. I think we touched on it earlier. I think, as I said earlier, it is very close. He's got 10 points, he needs 12, and then it triggers a race ban automatically. I don't think that's anything they can appeal either. I don't think so. Well, I think everything's appealable in Formula One, so I don't know. But as far as I know, that is a slam dunk race ban. And again, as I said earlier, it takes nothing to get those 2 points. 1 kilometre an hour over the speed limit in the pit lane, that could be your 2 points right there. A failed overtake, it's just so easy. So I don't want to tempt it, because I don't want him to get a race ban. I want whoever wins the championship, I want it to be done legitimately. I don't, if Bottas wins the championship because Hamilton gets a race ban, great, Bottas is world champion, but then forever it's going to be, but he only did it because of this. So I don't want him to get a race ban, but he's got to be careful. One tiny mistake, one poor radio communication from the team like today, or misinterpretation of the rules, and suddenly he's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he's in a tricky position, and I will say we have yet to see, and I think this was introduced for 2013, from the 2013 season onwards. This sort of points. Oh, sorry, hit my microphone. This points on your license thing. We've never seen anyone get to the 12. Grosjean got quite close last year, I think, probably about as close as Hamilton is, but he only had something like a 1 week window in which to score the 12th point, whereas Hamilton has got, was it 2 months? Did you say like 6 weeks? He's got quite a lot of races. Yeah, so he's got quite a few races ahead of him in which he has to be pretty careful. I wouldn't bet against it, to be honest. Especially as he's just been getting them for just stupid things, just like things you wouldn't even expect. So I think he needs to go back, read the rule book, and just be very careful.
Just going back to what you said about Hazel a bit ago in the stream, it's just occurred to me, after Turkey, he'll only lose 2 points. So he'll still have 8 going into next season.
Yeah.
So this could be something that rolls on into next year. And it won't be until July that the next lot are off his licence. Wow.
I mean, if I was Lewis Hamilton, maybe I'd want to get the race ban this season and get it over and done with, so I'd have to worry about it.
I was just thinking that, I'm not saying that he will, but, win the championship in the penultimate race and then take somebody out or whatever, or break it, or speed in the pit lane very slightly in Abu Dhabi and get that race ban. That's a very good point, actually. Wow, Sean, congratulations. You did something right for a change. Somebody asked, and I can't find it now, a couple of people asking about the F2 sprint race. I think first and foremost, thank God everybody walked away from that. I say thank God, I mean just thankfully they walked away from that one, because that was horrendous. That could have been so much worse. Horrible corner. We talked on Twitter, didn't we, Stuart, on DMs about that runoff area at turn 3. It doesn't feel enough for cars going at that speed at all.
No, and I say this knowing that the FIA, inspect and make sure the tracks are constructed in a suitable way. I think they will have thought about this. They won't just be like suddenly surprised by today. However, the runoff area really tightens up towards the end of turn 3, and they are going at high speed, at high G, high lateral G, which means they are not as stable as they would be through some other corners. A thing like a puncture or a slight error, like we saw with Grosjean at turn 3. He got a little bit of oversteer on and it just threw him off the track. Something like that, and it's very easy to just lose it at full speed into that barrier. And at the point where those F2 cars, which if you didn't see, they essentially sort of ran into each other towards the end of turn 3, and just a few tens of meters went straight into the barrier, went under the barrier, and sort of then caught fire. But yeah, it did look concerning. I think I'm not as concerned that they went underneath the barrier, because the first layer of that Tech Pro barrier isn't essentially bolted down. It's kind of free. It's meant to just take some speed off, and it did do that. And then as they hit the inner barrier, it kind of got squeezed up over their heads. So I think that's fine. I think that works fine, except for the fact that it did potentially trap them inside the barriers. And if there was an injury, if they were a bit trapped or whatever, the marshals took quite a long time to get to them, and there was a fire. So that's something maybe they need to think about. But as this is sort of a track built around Olympic structures, there's only so much they can really do. I think it's probably fine, because I think the FIA have done the research on this, but it did cause concerns looking at it.
Yeah, I think the FIA, it will be within their regulations and that, but it does look, for the cars at that speed, all that load, it just doesn't seem like a massive runoff when you consider some of the runoff areas we see. For example, Bahrain, that massive one, and that's at the end of a straight, but it's still a huge runoff area. But yeah, I'm sure it's within all stress tests and all that business and all whatever the FIA do, but it just doesn't seem a lot. And I agree with you on the marshals. I think that's kind of unacceptable it took so long. In fact, it's not kind of unacceptable, it's totally unacceptable. You look at Hulkenberg in Abu Dhabi, when he's upside down, the stewards are there like that. They're so quick, and they're putting that fire out as quickly as they can. And yeah, I don't know if there's some kind of... No, I don't see that. I was just going to say, I don't know if maybe there's a limit to how many marshals can be there, and that means there are fewer there, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't stop one person being there super quickly, does it? So, and also, if there aren't enough marshals, then they shouldn't be racing. It's the point on that one. I can't find a comment, and I'm so sorry. I'll have a very quick scroll now, but it's a good question to end on for the little Q&A bit. And I can't find it. So if it was you, thank you for your question. Basically, who do we think is going to finish third in the Constructors this year? Let me know in chat. Who do you reckon? McLaren, Racing Point, maybe Renault in there as well. Maybe Ferrari will shock us all. Who do you think is going to end up third this year? What do you reckon, Stuart? I'm going to go Renault for third.
That's a bold one. I would have thought that was one of the most outside ones. I'm going to go with McLaren. I think the obvious choice is Racing Point, but I've been so delightedly surprised by McLaren. I think part of this is like I kind of want it to happen for them, but I think two solid drivers, they've really got it together. I think they can do it. I think they can hang on to third place.
My thinking is there seems to be some very good pace in that Renault power unit, and their car seems to work very well at high-speed tracks. So I think you look at Nürburgring, Portimao, Imola, Turkey, maybe they're going to be really close in there with McLaren and Racing Point, and we're going to see a bit of ebbing and flowing as to who's quickest each weekend, and we're going to arrive in Bahrain with a similar situation to what we have now. McLaren maybe third, but only... 7 points up the road from Renault in terms of points, and then we get to Bahrain, which is all about speed and the outer oval. And if they nail it those 2 weekends, they could come away from Bahrain 1 and 2 with a very healthy lead for third, and then it's on to Abu Dhabi, and there's a couple of nice long runs there as well. So I have thought about it. I'm not just throwing names.
You clearly have. I'd love you to just snip that bit out of the recording and just keep it for later.
Oh, if I'm right, I will. If I'm wrong, we'll bury it.
Good thinking there. I'm quite glad Renault, particularly their engine, seems to have got it a bit together actually this year, because they did seem like they were just sort of going to end up being sort of the also ran kind of power unit, especially when they're going to be all on their own as Alpine next year. I would be happy. I would be happy if you're right. I'd be happy for any of them actually. I think this battle for third place is tremendous. It's livening up what's a bit of a dull battle at the front.
I mean, yeah, I have to say, I don't give a damn who finishes third. I'm quite happy just enjoying the fight and how we get there. It's a great opportunity with Ferrari struggles for a team like McLaren, Racing Point and Renault to pick up a bit of extra cash as well, which is going to see them quite nice into the future. So, yeah, I think Ricciardo's driving really well as well.
I think so too, yeah. Which is good, and then he'll just slide into that McLaren, and seeing as it's basically the same car next year, we get to start it all over again.
What if Renault finished third this year and McLaren finished third next year? Do we look at that and go, it's Ricciardo, that is? It's all him.
Or do we say it's Mercedes?
That's true, yeah. But yes, we will wrap it up there. A few people saying Racing Point, some saying Renault, a lot of people saying McLaren, but a nice mix of teams in the chat there. But like I say, I don't mind either way. But yes, thank you very much, Stuart, for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you for nearly 2 hours about Russia. Wow. Was it that
really
good?
Can on, can't we? Pleasure to be here. Thanks it's good to be back. I haven't been on for a few races, so yeah, fun to chat F1.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Thank you again, and I'm sure I'll talk to you shortly. Yes, awesome stuff. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to you guys for tuning in as well. Again, like I keep saying, just over 1,000 watching, so please do drop a like on the stream. 277 in total. Let's see if we can get that well over 300 while I wrap things up. That'd be massively appreciated. Like I say, really helps the channel out when we get some likes on stuff, so we do love a good interaction. here on YouTube. I'm going to say it now. I'm dancing for some reason. I don't know why. So I'm just going to put my hands down and we'll go straight over to the end screen and we'll wrap it up before I completely lose my mind. Great to have you with me this afternoon. A little earlier as well for the stream today. Pretty happy with that Russian Grand Prix. Like I said at the start, we've had worse. I don't think we've had any better. So I'd say best Russian Grand Prix we've had possibly ever. How's that one for you? I will be back next week with content. No race next week, of course, but there'll still be plenty of content on the channel as well. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that. And also, get ready to get hyped. It's the Nürburgring next, followed by Portimao, Imola, and Turkey. I think that's the right order. Somewhere in there, we have got a very exciting and, I'm going to say, unpredictable run of races because we don't know who's going to be quick at these tracks, so I cannot wait. This is the section of the calendar since it was published I've been most excited about, so yes, that's good stuff. Russia's out of the way. We can focus on the good stuff now. But thank you for coming along. Like I said, back next week. Please do follow me over on social media if you want to, of course. Links to Twitter and all of that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.